Yo, I'm Brendan. Today let's talk about people who got lucky for being stupid. They got huge returns based on bad decision making and were rewarded for it, which then reinforces that bad decision making for both themselves and everyone else around them. This is what I call when your investing is bad, but your profits are genius. These are all just my opinions, and so if you don't want to hear them, that's fine. You can watch a different video. I've seen two different examples of this happening recently, and the first one is Bitcoin. Well, and it's crypto in general. I first heard about Bitcoin in like 2009. I had a college friend who was like, hey man, you got to look at this Bitcoin stuff. It's the future. It's going to replace money. You've got to check into it. And I asked him a few questions and tried to understand it, but still really didn't. Because at the time, it's 2009. What do we need a digital version of currency for? What is that going to do for us? And I don't think he did the best job explaining what blockchain technology could do and how it's amazing that there's only ever going to be a limited number of Bitcoin in the world. And so inherently that scarcity could promote the value of the thing. I don't remember him saying anything about decentralized currencies so that it doesn't really matter what kind of jurisdiction you're under. Everybody's got this level playing field in using the same kind of currency that isn't subservient to a particular government or dictator or anything like that. And now that it's 15 years later, we've seen a little bit of the potential of what cryptocurrency can do, but it's still really in its infancy because there's not a lot of people who are using it as currency. More than anything, people using cryptocurrency reminds me of the Forex boom and speculation that happened, what was that, 5 or 7 years ago? When everyone was like, let's get into Forex. And in essence, Forex is foreign exchanges. It's foreign stores of money in different currencies. And so you're trading your money for a different kind of money, hoping the value is going to go way up and you're going to benefit from this. But in reality, it's speculation. It's not really helped that many people to invest and get wealthy. It's probably hurt more people than it's helped. And the way I see it, there's only one group who actually deserves to be profiting from investing in crypto. And those are the early adopters who saw it for what it is and invested in it despite the fact that it's actually a terrible looking investment. These are people who saw the underlying qualities of the blockchain, who saw the underlying potential of something like smart contracts. They're the nerds and the weirdos and the dreamers, and frankly, they're the believers in the meaning behind what crypto is. If they bought a bunch of it on the potential that it could go up on value, or because they actually thought they would be using it as currency, it's called cryptocurrency for a reason. It's not called crypto investments. Then by chance, if those guys happen to have their accounts increase in value, then at least they were there for the right reasons. Everybody else besides them were speculators, and speculation is not investment. Speculation is just seeing something that is popular, that's got a buzz in the public eye and saying, hey, let me jump on this bandwagon, regardless of what it is, regardless of what anyone believes about it, and hopefully it skyrockets in value and it goes to the moon and I can buy a Lambo. I think on the face of it, those two things seem really similar, but they're actually vastly, vastly different. It would be like if I had an experience where my life was saved because I spent the night drinking. Like let's say tonight, for example, it's a Wednesday, it's a weekday, not the best time to go drinking a bunch, but what if I broke into our wine stores and just downed every bottle and got absolutely hammered? And then tomorrow, instead of driving to the car dealership where I was going to go do some work for them, I was forced to stay home in bed and just sleep it off. Then at 12:30 p.m., whenever I roll out of bed and can barely crank an eye open to check on the news, I see, oh my goodness, that dealership was hit by a crashed passenger plane and the whole thing went up in flames. And had I been there that day doing the work I planned on doing, then I would have surely been killed. And so then if I learn from the outcome of having my life miraculously saved as an indicator of that being a good action, then maybe I should drink heavily every night. Because what if it saves me from some other disaster like that? To me, that's what most of us doing crypto investing are doing with our lives. We're saying, well, but look, it went up. My results justify whatever kind of logic you'd have or don't have in doing this because I made money doing it. It's objectively a bad decision. There are not going to be good things that come out of this. If by sheer dumb luck we stumble into a good outcome, wow, pat ourselves on the back for just happening to be lucky this time around. But we didn't deserve that. We deserve something much worse. The big difference between investing and speculating is that whenever we're investing in something, yes, we're taking a risk. We realize that the money could go up or down in value to some degree, but it's an informed decision because we understand the platform that we're investing in. Let's say it's stocks and bonds. We understand the history of that. We understand that we have a reasonable expectation of gain in the future because of the way this whole system is set up. And we're not just hoping on that. We've got a ton of examples of this happening in the past. And so while there is risk, there's a tiny bit of risk in comparison to something like speculation. Speculation is seeking an abnormally high return with a crazy amount of risk. Oftentimes you could completely make your fortune or lose it in that one speculative venture. It's a lot like going to casino, going to the craps table, or going to a slot machine and saying, hey, I believe in my being that I'm going to make money doing this. I have some unprovable thoughts about why I believe this particular slot machine is going to be a winner tonight. So I'm going to put $10,000 on this one slot machine, and I'm going to make my fortune doing it. The make or break nature of that kind of rash decision makes it speculation. And the unfortunate reality with something like crypto is that because it's such a brand new technology and because there are so many new things that are corollaries around it, then there's a lot of opportunities for people to get taken advantage of, and regulators and rule makers and any kind of overwatch can't keep up. NFTs came out and were sold like they were financial instruments long before anybody could say, hey, what's an NFT? How do we regulate this thing? What's good or bad about that? Is it criminal for someone to claim that you're for sure going to make a ton of money if you invest in their NFT project? Technology just moves too fast, and as a result, a bunch of people ended up losing money, especially whenever they followed influencers or other people who have no right recommending financial instruments to people, let alone things that really aren't financial instruments. All right, that's enough about crypto. Let's get into example number 2, which hits a little closer to home for me because it involves home buying. If you're a millennial or a Gen Z person who's still renting, or you're living with family and you haven't bought a home yet, you feel the sting of the ridiculous increase in home prices in the last few years, as well as the ridiculous increase in mortgage rates. If we went back something like 8 or 10 years, a really nice starter home would be something like what? $300,000, $350,000 across many, many different places in the United States. And so let's say you wanted a loan for $300,000, you had good credit, and at that time mortgage loan rates were historically low. Let's say you got a mortgage for 2.65%. That means your payment would be just over $1,200 a month. Amazing. Probably not as cheap as the place you were renting, but doable in terms of an affordable house that you can actually buy. Fast forward to today, and odds are that house has doubled in value. Maybe it's gone up even more than that, but let's say that it's just doubled. So instead of needing a $300,000 loan, you've got to get a $600,000 mortgage to be able to buy that same house. The house that's just sat there and only gotten older since 8 or 10 years ago, yet somehow it's twice as much money. But that's not even the worst part. Now, instead of getting a 2-point-something% mortgage, the average mortgage interest rate as of right now is 7%. So you're borrowing twice as much money at 2.5 times the interest rate, which means your payment would be $4,032 right now. In under a decade, the same house going from $1,200 a month to $4,000 a month is absolutely insane. It's more than tripled. Somehow I doubt that most of our incomes have gone up by 400%, so that same home remains affordable for us. It just hasn't. But here's another example where bad advice ended up being proven as something that was actually a really good decision. The way that we chose to buy the house that I'm sitting in right now was by using Dave Ramsey's home buying guidelines. Dave Ramsey starts off hard whenever he's talking about home buying guidelines because he says that your entire payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance all combined should be no more than 25% of your take-home pay. That's vastly less than what mortgage lenders will actually lend you. Mortgage lender will loan you something like 35, 38% of your before taxes pay. So we're talking about a 20% difference overall in the amount of money that you're actually being able to spend on your house. Dave is saying you are buying way less house than the average person does with an income like yours. Not only that, he recommends you put 20% down and you only get a 15-year mortgage. So you're limited again by the amount of cash you have, and you're limited because a 15-year mortgage is naturally going to have a higher payment than a 30-year mortgage. So for my wife and I, our hard cap on the home we could buy in 2016 when we bought this place was $250,000. We had $45,000 in cash that we could use as a down payment. We were ready to buy a house that was under 25% of our take-home pay. And the logic behind all of that, the reason that we believe Dave in his decision-making process was that what if the worst happens? What if somebody in the family gets really sick and they have very expensive medical expenses? That also probably means they can't work. So now you're down to one income. What if home prices absolutely crater and then you're upside down in your loan? Well, you're less upside down because you've taken out less of a loan. And then in the meantime, 15 years later, no matter what, you've paid off your house. And so you're guaranteeing that you're going to pay less money in interest over time. And you're guaranteeing that in the end, you're going to be mortgage free way earlier than other people, which gives you options for the second half of your life. So all those things made enough sense to us that we were going to use that as our decision-making framework to buy a house. In the end, we would have had much better results had we told Dave to forget about it and go and buy the most expensive house possible, leverage ourselves up to the absolute eyeballs, because hindsight being 2020, we'd be a lot richer doing that. I'm sure at that time we could have afforded something like $2,200 a month as a mortgage payment. And so if we do that math from back then and we get a 30-year mortgage with a 2.6% interest rate like what was available back then, we could have borrowed $550,000. We still could have put almost 10% down with the cash that we had on hand, so we would have got approved for the loan. That means we could have bought a house that was $600,000 in 2016. Where I live, houses have at least doubled, if not doubled plus a little bit. So that means for us, in the course of 8 years, our $600,000 house would probably be worth $1.2, $1.3 million, and we would have locked in a historically low interest rate, which means our money was hedged against inflation. Now we're paying in 2016 dollars for what we're getting in 2024 value. And then you have just all kinds of options with that extra equity. We could take out a HELOC and fix up the house. We could take some money out of the house and buy another property and use it as a rental property. There's just so much gap in there. But not knowing what the market was going to do and not knowing what interest rates were going to do, why would that have been a good decision? That's not a good decision-making framework to say, gee, I wonder if maybe the housing market will absolutely explode. Maybe there'll be a housing crisis. Maybe it'll be difficult for people to keep up and build enough homes for whatever reason. And maybe mortgages are basically going to be 3.5 times more expensive. In that case, it justifies me buying the largest house. I don't think anyone even did that. I think people that just had a bad financial framework have lucked into a massive appreciation in the value of their homes. Back then we could have said, let's live as fancy as we possibly could. Let's keep up with the Joneses. Let's try and buy a nicer house than any of our friends. And let's absolutely throw caution to the wind and just close our eyes and hope that it works out for us. Let's hope we stay healthy and get raises and can somehow afford this, even though we're like leveraged up to our eyeballs. Everything will be fine. But those are the people that would have been rewarded for their bad decision making. And now those same people are probably telling everyone around them, buy as much house as you can afford. Home values just go up, bro. It's all right. It'll work out. Everything will be fine. And that's just not the case. Now, granted, I think this is still a better decision than if you put all of your money into crypto or something, because if you pick some altcoin and it goes to zero, well, now you have $0. Even if you were leveraged up to your eyeballs and you somehow lost your house. Let's say they foreclose on you, you lose your house, it's a stressful time, your credit score is all messed up for 7 years, it's rough. At least you didn't lose everything. And these are just two examples. I'm sure I'm skipping over a bunch of other potential ones. If you know of something, put it in the comments that's like, hey, Uncle Larry had a terrible decision-making framework to get himself into this situation, and yet he still lucked himself out. Somehow, it still worked out for him, even though it really shouldn't have, and it probably didn't for 90% of other people. This is like financial survivorship bias. It's totally fine. Look around. Everybody ended up okay, and a statement like that just overlooks everyone who didn't end up as okay. My motive in talking about this today is just to call out this kind of illogical decision-making framework so we can be on the lookout for it and say, does the end result of the action actually inform our decision-making process today? Just because someone who stumbled into crypto 5 years ago has made a bunch of money on it because they're speculators doesn't necessarily mean that we should jump on that bandwagon today. Is it still a good decision-making framework for today based on everything we know? Is it an investment or is it speculation? Is it gambling? What is this thing that we're potentially getting into here? This is a tricky subject, and I realize that some people are going to be like mad at me for talking about it that way, but I accept that. We're going to disagree on certain things, and hindsight's always 20/20. So if I had a time machine and I went back 10 years, I would buy the most expensive house possible and or shovel our life savings into Bitcoin because I know it's going to happen now. But at the time, when you don't know that's going to happen and it's a terrible decision-making framework, I think we wisely avoided those things. But feel free to tell me how I'm wrong in the comments. And also the secret comment word for today is dump, because I went to the dump last week and it was smelly and nasty. And also I think our bad decisions belong in the dump. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.